Hi, everybody. My name is Jessica Holyfield, and I'm a professional dance choreographer and dance educator based out of the southeast of the United States. And we are about to show and watch something pretty incredible. This is the very first interview I've had the privilege of doing for YouTube, and it happens to be with the one and only Gravity Jacobs. Now, you may have seen my commentary or review of his review from the WDCC, shared my thoughts there. I also have my own personal review of Royal Family Set, and we were able to engage in an incredible discussion surrounding Vogue, the choreographic scene, and what that entails with Vogue within it, as well as touching on certain points, and Gravity kind of getting in the hot seat himself with reviewing some of his own work. So I am very honored to be creating this intro for you guys to just kind of know and get ready for. Let's go ahead and get into it. Okay.
Stressful.
It's so stressful. Hi, everybody. This is a fun little Zoom equivalence that I have. I have Gravity Jacobs here, which is so exciting. I'm humbled. I'm like a freaking fan over here. So excited. But we decided to connect to further the conversation. And I'm really, really, really excited to be having this conversation, especially with somebody like Gravity that I highly admire, specifically in this field. I feel like we're all going to learn something today. It's going to be great. So are you ready to get started?
Yeah.
Well, can you tell us
Oh,
like 2 fun facts about yourself before we like get into it?
okay. Well, hello everyone. If you don't know me, my name is Gravity Juicy Couture Mark Jacobs. I'm in the Kiki House of Juicy Couture and the Mainstream House of Mark Jacobs. I've been a active member of Ballroom since 2016 or so, so coming up on 10 years. And I've also been active in the kind of competitive choreography scenes and the industry scene here in Los Angeles, California. So I sort of have a foot in both worlds, which for me, I like to kind of use that to talk about when I see sort of Vogue or Ballroom enter the industry or enter the mainstream in that way, and to kind of talk about how it's portrayed, who's doing it, what people are doing right, what people are doing wrong, and how we can do better in the future. So that's me. Neither of those are fun facts. Fun facts. Let's see.
That's
I'm a
actually
cute
very
cat.
fun, though. I didn't know you were
See?
part of 2 houses, so that's
Yes,
cool.
yes.
Love that.
Yeah, so yeah, in the ballroom scene, there's the mainstream scene and the kiki scene, and they're basically kind of like parallel scenes, but they have different sort of structures. And the kiki scene is more of like a for fun, sort of less stress, less pressure, and more kind of like family and youth oriented. That's how it was designed. It's often as competitive as the mainstream scene now, but you'll have different house structures within each scene.
Oh my goodness, we could probably
Mhm.
have an entirely separate
Hmm.
conversation just about the family tree per
Right,
se
right,
of it.
right.
Oh, but
Yeah,
that we'll save that for later. But
yeah.
wow, okay, so this is being attached, if you guys are noticing, to the original video that I received permission from Gravity to review because
Mm.
I thought it was such important topics that do need to be talked about. And Gravity, you made fantastic points that I double down on immensely,
Mm.
specifically about this is not a new conversation. It's not a new
Right.
topic, even though it comes across as such as it
Mm.
being a topic in isolation on your channel, but it's not a new conversation, not just in, I'm assuming, Vogue, but in most street
Right.
dance scenes, this has been a conversation. So I'm
Yeah.
really excited to kind of like put our heads together to
Mm.
really, help in understanding both sides, like what's specifically happening in the Vogue cultural side versus
Mhm.
what's happening in the choreography scene too, and just allowing people the opportunity to have a stepping stone of their curiosity saturated in directions on where to go for them to be able to find and research deeper to
Yeah.
be able to grow in this area outside of our conversation. So I wanted to honestly kind of start with the response of the original video because you had
Mm.
mentioned that you wanted to touch on that. So would you be willing to share?
Yeah, so I posted the original review of the Vogue section of Royal Family. I want to say it was like a few months ago now, 6 months, I don't know.
It was
And
3
I,
months
I did,
ago. Oh man.
yeah, yeah, I was worried it would be like much more controversial than it was, which I was glad it
Mm.
wasn't. I tried to be pretty, measured about it. But yeah, I think something that I didn't have as much insight into, which I was glad to hear from, is that people from like the New Zealand sort of ballroom community and like the that area, they were all saying that a lot of my suspicions were correct, where it's like they do have connections to these people in some cases, and they are not like impossible to reach out to, and that they have been also sort of critiquing royal family from this angle more locally for a while, and so they were happy to have sort of uh, my voice on it too. So that I think was an interesting side of it as well, and I think it really does highlight this sort of frustration that I was talking about, where it's like that we are not really that inaccessible as a community. Like it is possible to reach out to members of ballroom and have them assist you and you know compensate them and all that. So I think that was a really interesting side of it that I wasn't fully expecting. But yeah, that was the main thing. Otherwise, it was mostly sort of positive or agreeing, and I think um, it there were people from both sides that were kind of coming into it and sharing their thoughts, which I really appreciated.
I love that. And I
Mhm.
think to your point, you were able to learn something new within the scene as well by knowing
Right.
what's going on in another country's equivalent of
Yes.
that scene. And I think
Yeah.
that's really cool. And it shows that your willingness to want to be open to the conversation versus how we do it here is the only way. You know what I
Right.
mean? Where
Exactly.
sometimes people can have that headspace. And so that's really cool that you truly wanted to have an open conversation
Mhm.
about it, not just I'm saying it for the sake of a video. I truly wanted to follow through,
Right.
and so I love that. I love that that was a thing, but I also understand too how people who probably were a little bit more not emotionally charged, but probably not
Right.
seeing it from the viewpoint that you were, they were
Mhm.
probably taking on if they were from not the scene per se in over in New Zealand, but they were seeing that more firsthand of that kind of
Exactly.
gritting
Yeah. Yeah.
sensitivity to hearing it from multiple facets. They're like, oh, I don't know what to do. Like there's like could be a sense of
Mhm.
no one's willing to take time to listen and understand. But that's not really what your video was about. It wasn't
Right.
about criticizing royal family exclusively. And that's what something that I was very clear on. Like I didn't take it that way at all.
Mhm.
Um, and I could tell the care that you put into addressing it because you could have been very much a straight up call out situation, but it wasn't the point of the video. It was to let's talk about key issues going on that are not new, but because this is
Mhm.
a more recent conversation and there's more eyes on it and there's more
Right.
conversation about it, there's a way that we can be more beneficial for
Mhm.
it. So I completely understand and respect that as well. I think that was great. I love that, and I learned so much from your like, I truly learned so much from your video, and so I'm really excited to
Mhm.
continue to use that moving on in my, observations in future either reviews and things of the like.
Yeah.
So you wanted to, touch on, I think, the judging side of points, like the rubric, as well as some technique.
Yes. Yeah, so I have some. I think you have probably a lot more experience on the, like, judging of these comp sites that I have. I have experience of it, as a choreographer, as a guest choreographer, where I'm, the rubric is shared with me and all that. And I know that in a lot of cases, especially for HHI, and I assume also for WWDC, that there's these sort of strict, um guidelines on including a certain number of fundamental styles and doing so in a way that's evident and comes across to the judges. And I think there's a lot of logistical challenges with that, where sometimes you do have to be a little bit heavy-handed, in the sense that, like, you need to make sure that the style that you're doing is counted as the style that it is. So I think sometimes the reason things can come across as a little, like, thrown in there is because of that, because you want to make sure that you get the credit or whatever. And then also it's like the judges, you know, qualified or not, in their own, respective fields, they may not have so much knowledge of particular styles to where they can say, oh, that's this or that's that, without having it really be kind of quite like obvious. So I think that's a really interesting layer of it too, that I think, and that's, I think, something that people from just ballroom may not completely understand, or people from just like fundamental sort of hip hop freestyle spaces may not understand, because those restrictions are different than the restrictions that are placed on us in a in a ballroom setting or in a freestyle, all style setting or whatever. So I think that was an interesting layer that I wanted to talk about. So I don't know if you know specifically for WWDC what the rubric looks like, but I was curious.
Yes, so it is very similar to HHI. So one reason
Okay.
why I did review the WDCC and I got permission from
WDCC.
them to do it was because there was a lot of people who had issues with not just, the Vogue section, but there was the
Mm,
entire structure of how the choreography was to the type of event
yeah.
that it was. So I just looked and saw what the differences were. So HHI is a street dance competition.
Right.
The rubric structure is catered to that as well. WDCC is not.
Right.
And that's a huge one that a lot of times that's why it's what is it? You don't just have to justify cultural street dances, you can
Mhm.
justify studio styles as well,
Right.
or other, but then
Mhm.
also you run into that the type of judge to find with that skill set becomes harder. But because of the people who train me for the HHI side, they're on WDCC. So I know
Mhm.
that to a certain degree there's that familiarity of that structure, which is really
Right.
cool. And so I had a lot of like I knew because people were challenging that it was a rigged competition. So I was more so addressing that for my review.
Okay.
And my personal relationship, knowing who's on panel,
Mhm.
I know that how they were trained and I know their character to where they've
Mhm.
been around the block enough to
Right.
where
They're
they're
not gonna
not it would be a disservice to the
Yeah.
entire competition if that were the case, and it's a disservice to Royal and to everybody else. So that's
Mhm.
why I think most of my review was focused on that, which is why I was really happy to see your review on the Vogue section
Mhm.
because I thought it was really beautifully timed as well for my own for that. So rubric wise, the touching specifically on style justification, you only have to justify 2 styles.
Okay.
So royal family by brand over the years with HHI,
Mhm.
because that's where they've really coined the mega crew format and
Right.
blueprint. Vogue and whacking, which I wanted to ask you this question. A lot
Mm.
of times in the choreography scene, they mesh whacking and Vogue elements together.
Yes.
What are your
Yes.
thoughts on that? Because
Yeah.
once we know
So
they're 2 different cultures.
yeah. So this is actually kind of my earliest sort of pain point between the two worlds that I inhabit, where even in college I was seeing, because I was in this competitive dance circuit in Los Angeles, and going to Bridge and to all these places, and then I was seeing this sort of conflation of the two styles as also sort of, I would say, maybe more accurately, there's kind of this combination of whacking and vogue and like heels dance, and then just like vaguely like femme dance is what it gets lumped into as this sort of
Yeah.
overall moniker. And yeah, it's tough from the side. I originally started whacking and voguing in the kind of like the freestyle scene, so I was really had a foot in each world. And they are like completely distinct in many ways. Like the whacking is West Coast, Vogue comes from the East Coast. There's shared history between them. They are sister styles in some sense, in the same way that all fundamental and hip hop styles kind of came around the same ways, and people were doing it in the same venues. And there's a bit of shared history where I know there was like a troupe of original punkers and whackers and voguers that kind of toured around the U.S. And so there's a lot of uh, melding of techniques and styles and sharing of cultures that came from that. And so they have parallel histories, and they're not completely distinct, but at the same time they are different styles. So generally, I don't love when the two are kind of like just mixed together. But I also think it's like, as you were saying, in this case, this competition is it's tough to the point where it's like there is this it does exist, this style of femme, whatever, right? It's like whether or not it should exist, whether or not it, you know, is a problematic blend of multiple things, it does exist as a thing. So it's like if that is a style that is justified in the sense where it's like it is a named style that exists, and people teach classes under this moniker. People teach like this style of choreo is named. Whether it should not have existed, like a different conversation, but it's like that's interesting also from the judging perspective, like, you know, maybe that's the style. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know with the HHI side, there's certain styles that depending on the crew, because we want to give them, we really root for crews to get a
Right, right.
style score because that's such a
Mhm.
very clear little fingerprint of the HHI structure is that clear
Yeah.
sections because each section is judged in two completely different criterias and a judge is only assigned to one. So in my
Mhm.
case with HHI, I was assigned skill. So I wasn't allowed to judge off of costuming. I
Mm.
wasn't allowed to judge off of the formations or the
Got
staging of
you.
it, but I was only allowed to judge off of authenticity, which
Mhm.
authenticity and difficulty and complexity are a separate category to the style itself. And that's what
Right.
I really wanted to touch on as well is that a lot of times which is a side note to why I really feel the pull and the push to do YouTube reviews is that there's not a lot of people that are talking about these things because a lot
Right.
of the judges are booked and blessed, right? Like they're not in that,
Exactly.
they don't have that desire to also do this too, which I completely
Yeah.
respect. But
Mhm.
it's something where there's many people in your space that I'm sure have such a wealth of knowledge that many people in the masses would be
Right.
honored to learn from, right?
Right.
But they just probably don't have the conviction, or not the conviction, but
Hmm.
like the pull and the desire to, but you do, right? So there's like a beautiful middle ground that both you and I are able to
Hmm.
present in our respective spaces. But
Yeah.
there's not enough people that have talked about whacking and vogue being different styles, because what people are exposed to are the combined mesh
Exactly.
femme
Yeah.
justification that you see at Vibe, at Body Rock, at
Hmm.
WAD, at anywhere.
Hmm.
And even at HHI, it's okay, if I see whacking fundamental key elements, but I also see a Vogue transition, we're going to give them
Right.
whichever one's going to weigh heavier. But it's not,
Right.
that doesn't inherently mean that they're going to get complexity or they're going to get authenticity. That's going to be a
Yeah.
feedback note, but most people don't know that crews are going to receive feedback on those things
Right.
depending on the judge and their scope. So that's why I try to be very like open to that, because
Yeah.
I didn't know that until I was in the room seeing it
Mm.
firsthand. So I know that not just with Vogue and whacking, I've noticed it with light feet. Light feet is
Hmm.
a really interesting style where sometimes people pair it on hip
Hmm.
hop. They do
Yeah.
hip hop and light feet, but they are two different. Like
Yeah.
they of course light feet is under hip hop,
There's
but you
overlap.
can
Right.
justify them separately culturally,
Hmm.
right? Also breaking. Sometimes
Yeah.
people mesh breaking and hip hop. Those are like kind of the trickier ones that you can experience.
Yeah.
But I would say the one that has it been probably the most fused, which is why I was honestly surprised that Royal did go with a full Vogue, like attempt
Yeah.
to go for a full Vogue,
Right.
because they normally don't. They
Yeah.
normally
No,
do
they
not
don't.
do Vogue
It's
together.
very, yeah.
It's very fused. And so I was
Yeah.
actually, that's why I was out kind of impressed with that, even though complexity and so many other
Right.
factors, they did not, I mean, just from observation,
Right.
their lowest score was their Vogue section because
Yeah.
of they got the style score, but they didn't get, but they on their skill side for Royal, they don't score high anyway because it's
Hmm.
oversaturation and lack of creativity in their vocabulary.
Hmm.
That's a really big thing with crews, not just with Royal. I noticed it with not with necessarily with like Takis, but like a lot of crews
Hmm.
that are very established or very set and trendsetters in their respective divisions, they
Yeah.
run into this problem all the time where, okay, I've set a trend, but now and they have to like maintain and also elevate because your
Hmm.
signatures aren't creative anymore because they're standard
Right.
now, which is really unfortunate for trend setting teams, right? So that's something that I've noticed with Royal since 2015. We've been
Yeah.
showing that decrease in the skill justification, which goes to the point of with their Vogue section, it's not the most creative that I've
Mm.
seen them do, but also
Right.
there's a mix of so many other things. Some of those members were right in the middle of World Street Woman Fighter too,
Sure.
with the
Sure.
stresses of the production and all of that. Is that an excuse? No.
Right.
It's still it's just there's so many different components to the conversation where all of it just means that the skill set of a judge to be able to look at a Vogue section to know, okay, I see what you're
Mm.
going for, but it doesn't mean that the direction of it, we need to be guided in a different
Right.
avenue, if that makes sense. So that's kind of like a
Yeah.
little overview. The difference between HHI and WDCC is not super huge
Mm.
because of the strictness of what you're looking for, and it's very itemized, but there's a lot of assumption that whatever flies at HHI is going to fly at WDCC, which is not really the case. You can fuse more at WDCC, but your fundamental and your baseline has to be justified, which is
Got you.
something that they did enough. But
Hmm.
to your point that I do stand behind is, did it look like they were checking off a box? It leans more that direction than not. Nothing wrong to Royal, but it does prompt
Right.
the conversation that they are a influence in the scene, and there's not a lot
Hmm.
of people talking about, well, is what we're doing the standard, is it not? Because a lot of times people will look at the first place routine, which is what happened back in the day in the mega cruise, is
Right.
okay, this blueprint's working, let's just keep that going, versus actually making it and calibrating it to you.
Yeah.
People just go, okay, that Vogue section passes, let's just use it. And that's what you're touching on, is that's the frustrating element, is there's so much more you can do. But a lot of people
Yes.
don't apply themselves, but that's a reflection of them, not really
Mm.
a reflection of the scene. But also it's we're doing what we're doing now is helping in the conversation, I think,
Right.
personally. But
Yeah, I think there's a few things there. First of all, I think one of the main factors behind teams combining whacking and Vogue that I saw is because they had such a surface level sort of introduction or understanding of the styles. In order to fill out a whole 45-second section or whatever, they
right.
often relied on using the little bits of technique they knew from both styles to have it feel not repetitive, instead of going deeper into one style, which, you know, requires a little bit more connection with the scene and understanding of fundamentals and all that. It became a lot easier to do to do just both of them at a more sort of basic level. And I think
Right.
that's also why at this section, one of the critiques that I gave and that I thought saw other people saying is that there's a lot of repetition, where it's like, you know, you're doing the same basic catwalk 3 times over. You're doing the same sort of, it's like there
Right.
wasn't that much variation. And part of that is because if they're used to interspersing it with, you know, whacking rolls and everything else, then they didn't have that depth of style to fill out the whole section. So I think that also sort of ties into it. And I think that was one of the reasons that I saw a lot of teams kind of combining them in the first place, is just that sort of lack of depth. Um, and then I think that the one thing I do want to say in terms of, and this is not as much of an excuse or an apology, but I think it's an interesting thing to keep in mind, is that the crew sort of ecosystem, the world, is almost entirely unpaid. It's almost entirely kind of done extracurricularly, with a huge amount of challenges on the director's side and the, you know, captain side, in terms of like organization and logistics and everything, and getting people to come together and dance and rehearse for 4 hours a day, 8 hours a day, whatever, in the first place is difficult. So a lot of the times the corner cutting, I think, comes less from a place of malice or lack of care, and maybe more from a place of, you know, the constraints that are placed logistically on it. And again, I'm not saying that as an excuse, but I think for people not in the scene, I think it's easy to see like, oh, first place at the World Dance Championship, these people must be paid, you know, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, these people are not making money. Like, you
No.
can, there many competitions from when I was doing it, I'm pretty sure it's still the same. You could, based off registration fees, you could win first place and still lose money,
Oh yeah.
because like, yeah, it's like the prizes don't exist, the registration fees are high, and you're not paid at all. So it's like, again, I think it's an important factor to consider, where it's like, it may not even be like a conscious choice or a malicious lack of care, as much as it is, you know, that limiting factor as well.
I
That's not to say that I think there aren't things you can do, and I'm happy to talk about those going future. But that, I think, it's an important thing to keep in mind as well.
I love that because
Yeah.
it's because it is an area that a lot of people separate the human from the art, which a lot of
Right.
times this is an art, which is why the
Mhm.
conversation came up, right? Like it's a culture, right? But also
Yes.
there's a way that you can showcase yourself as an artist as well
Right.
within the space. It's the medium in which you can write or paint or whatever. But it's something where a lot of times people look at the brand of Royal, or they look
Mhm.
at the brand of a crew, and they're very quick to, you know, ta 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 ta, how dare you, right? Very much in that
Mhm.
space, whenever they're ignoring the fact of like I had mentioned, you know, some of the girls just, they got on the
Right.
wrong
Right.
side of production in another country, and they're getting screwed
Mhm.
over daily in that space, and then
For
having
sure.
the quick turnaround time for an international competition, like it's a lot for a human to do,
Right.
especially for those who have a brand like Royal Family, where they've gotten a lot of slack for when they try to branch out
Mhm.
and be different from the Paris side. They get
Yeah.
criticized. When they do what Paris did, they get
Right.
called, "Why don't you branch out?" So there's
Right.
a lot of that navigating in that space too, which is, you know, why it's always a hot topic in the scene, you
Mhm.
know? So I really appreciate you saying that, because a lot of times people, and I know we can also feel that way too. I know I can experience that when I look at a lot of information, or when I'm judging, like it's hard to see the human, because the human
Right.
makes it a little bit harder to objectively, you know, do the criteria.
Mhm.
But whenever you like just step back and you look, you're like, everybody's doing this because they love what they do, and they want to
Exactly.
be able to represent their country, and they want to show, you know, contribute to the space in this way. So
Mhm.
I love the fact that you touched on that. That's so important. And yeah, that was great. That's great. Oh, I wanted to ask, this is something that I was going to leave in my video, but I took it out because I knew I was going to ask you, and I was just wanted to
Okay.
hear it. So I did have two questions specifically. I'll ask this
Mhm.
one first and then my follow up. What are some baseline key elements, like if you had a checklist on,
Mhm.
okay, for a Vogue section, because I would observe balls, right? And I would just
Right.
look and see what are the common denominator key elements that I'm normally seeing to those who pass
Mhm.
versus those who don't, in the quality in which they execute it.
Right.
What would you say for a choreographic sense to
Mhm.
make it to where it's a very safe justification, but an opportunity to showcase complexity and authenticity? what would be your checklist, and what would be the preferred order in which you would show it? Because breaking, for instance, you would normally start with the top rock and finish out with a freeze. It's kind of your basic flow. You don't have to do it, but it does help on what we're conditioned within this space to operate. So that's kind of my first question.
Right. So I think there's a lot of commonality between the sort of things I would expect to see in a ball and then the things I would expect to see in a choreo setting, but there are some differences as well. But if I'm judging from a ball perspective, if I'm judging on a panel at a ball, what I would be looking for Vogue or for Vogue Femme specifically, you have the 5 elements, and that's kind of your core rubric breakdown where you have catwalk, duck walk, hands performance, spins and dips, and then floor performance. And those would be, it's not necessarily that you have to do all 5 of them, but it's like what you're doing is sort of in that world. And then more than that, in terms of getting through versus not getting through, it's about first of all transitions between the elements, making it look natural. It's about musicality. Obviously, the context of musicality is different in a choreo setting as it is in a freestyle setting. In a ballroom setting, you have the musicality of the beat, which is being live DJ'd, as well as the commentator, which is adding additional levels of musicality, and the chants and everything else. And then it's also just kind of like engagement with the audience, with the judges, performance overall, creativity, all of those things. And then I think there's also the subtext of like, for ballroom, getting your 10s or not determines whether you go on to battles. And so the sort of subtext there is like, will this person be able to have a chance to win a battle against the people who have already gone, if that makes sense? And then also, will this person be a danger to themselves or others? Is sort of the factor. So
I
so
love
it's like sometimes it's like a little bit of a variation where it's like sometimes you'll see if really, really, really good people go, it'll be a lot harder for the people after them to make through it, versus if the overall level is a little bit lower, then maybe there's a little bit more slack.
Okay.
So and that's less of like that's more like specific to the event and the venue and everything else. But I would say there's a little bit of a difference between the way that I would judge a ball, and then obviously if I'm judging like a choreography competition, I think the rubric is a little bit different for me, because like I touched on in the video, a lot of the elements are site specific, where they're like context specific, where it's like this is a movement to get towards the front of the stage, right? And the shape of the stage is often very different. In a ball setting, you would have like a long I or T-shaped stage, whereas you have like a narrow rectangle here. So some elements are a little bit harder to do in the context that they were originally designed. Doesn't mean you can't do them, but it means that they're sort of like shifted a little bit. So I think for me, what I would be looking at from a choreo standpoint still would be like the use of the elements within the context of the stage in a way that makes sense. Like I talked about, where it's like a catwalk should take you somewhere most of the time, or it should feel really grounded to the 4 on the 4 kind of beat of it all. I would also say for musicality, it'd be like, accenting the crashes, having the musicality on the backbeats as well, and just like having the flow of the performance match what you would expect. It's not as much of a rule as like a kind of a rough rubric, but usually you have phrases of like 16 or 32 in a Vogue context, right? It's like, hands, 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 catwalk, 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 spin, dip, or whatever the case is. It's like, and usually a tens would be like 30 or 45 seconds at max. So it's like similar to the length of a choreo stage piece. But I would expect to see a few dips probably. I would expect to see them in places that make sense for the overall phrasing of everything. It's mostly just like the placement of the elements within the context of the track and the musicality and all that. So it's a long answer, but it's like it's really, that's the main thing is like, are they using the elements? Are they using them correctly technique wise? And then are they using them correctly in the context of what's happening in the music and the stage, and the blocking?
That's awesome. I mean, I've never said anything long-winded a day in my life.
Right.
Okay, so now that actually helped me create a secondary question to the
Mm,
next question. So a lot of cases in other styles, you would see a fake out, or when
right.
people are about to lock in but they don't. So
Yes.
it's meant to help enhance and promote investment of captivation.
Mhm.
Is there an equivalence to that with dips?
Absolutely. Yeah. So like a fake out dip can be very literally just like you're starting the movement and then you catch yourself on your hands in like a backbend or whatever, or you just like stop, or you kind of freeze on the floor and shift into another dip. You see it all the time, and I think it's exactly what you're saying, where it's like, like managing the audience expectation, really drawing them in, kind of like, you know, playing with their emotions in some sense, and yeah, so that's definitely something you would see a lot. Um, but yeah, and I think sometimes the reason people don't get tens is either if they obviously are offbeat, if they miss the crash. The crashes are when the dips would happen, so that's on the 4 or the 8 usually. It's literally like a distorted cymbal crash in the music. That's pretty much always in Vogue tracks. And then also would be, if that it doesn't really line up with the, I don't know, it's like it's a very like rough thing, but it's like there's a kind of unspoken sense of when you should dip or when you shouldn't dip, and it's like if it just feels randomly placed and not phrased correctly, then that would be, a negative thing. But yeah, absolutely, there's fake out dips, there's all sorts of stuff like that.
Oh, I love that. Okay. And then my
Yeah.
secondary question to that is, so music, right? Music a lot of
Mm,
times came about and then the dance followed. So
exactly.
would you say what are some go-to, the name of it would be called timbres. So what part of the music specifically, not
Mm,
just the sound, but the sound in like the description of that sound, what are those
mm,
go-tos if somebody's wanting to, let's say they want to be able to pick up on a track, listen to it and go, you know what? This sounds like something that you I would feel comfortable doing Vogue to or practicing Vogue to,
gotcha.
but being able to
Yeah.
at least have a direction as to why that song feels
Mm,
that way. Do you have kind of a breakdown or an
yes.
overview of what is good to listen out for?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what helps me for this is that I also produce remixes, mostly casually, mostly for me, for my own classes. But like
Love it.
just that has given me a real kind of concrete sense of this. But generally speaking, first of all, it would be BPM. You're looking usually anywhere from 120 to 140. 140 would be pushing it on speed. But honestly, in the choreo world, you're going to see a lot more on the higher BPM side of that for time reasons. Yeah, so you're looking for that to make the catwalk feel, fast enough to feel like normal, but not so fast that it feels rushed. And so you have time to actually complete the movements and sit in the hips and everything. And then in terms of other things, it would be again the crashes that I talked about. That's that sample it's originally from a song called The Ha Dance by Masters at Work, and it has been interpolated millions of times for every single Vogue track in existence, pretty much. And it is essentially a distorted like cymbal crash that happens on the 4s or the 8s usually. And that's really the hallmark of Vogue music. It doesn't need to have it to Vogue to it, but oftentimes when you're editing the track to make it more Vogue like, the easiest button to click is just add that crash, and then now it's a Vogue track.
Oh.
Other than other than that, I mean, the base of Vogue music is house music, right? It's house dance, so it's like in many ways there's so many similarities there, BPM wise, and then also just like kick pattern wise. You have the 4 on the floor. You have also some similarities with like Jersey Club and ballet funk and other things. We have like the kick patterns like doom 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 doom. Those also tie into like a Vogue sensibility. And yeah, just kind of like the lower bumpy kicks that match the like catwalk and duckwalk musicality, as well as like additional beats to hit for hands performance. And the kind of emphasis for dips is the main hallmarks I would look out for.
Okay. Oh, that's wonderful. I love that so
Yeah.
much. Okay. Awesome. So is there anything now I'm finished with my questions for
Mhm.
now. Going back to, judging side of points rubric,
Mhm.
technique notes, is there anything else you wanted to add before we kind of look at some examples of Vogue being done in a way that would be seen complex, high
Sure.
level, that
Yeah.
equivalence?
Yeah, I think the one thing that I really wanted to touch on, and it only kind of relates to that, is just like as a team or a director, what can you do if you're trying to do a style like this justice, if you're trying to bring people in? And I think there's a few different answers for that. The first one and the best one is to literally get someone from the ballroom community to come in person and either help choreograph it, look over it, help block it, or just literally be a sounding board in the sense of like, hey, here's a video of us doing the piece. Does this feel natural? Does this feel appropriately placed? Are the elements correct or whatever? Or I think honestly, the starting point that I would recommend for any team that's wanting to put a fundamental style is to have a fundamental class. So like a class that's fully based on the technique, the basics, and everything. And that is valuable for the choreographer as well as for all the people doing it. And it makes cleaning and everything so much easier because you have that understanding, at least at a basic level, of what the element is supposed to be. And I think a lot of times what happens in the cleaning process when you don't have that is that so much of the technique gets removed for the sake of cleanliness, like I talked about, but that can really be combated by having that basis in the fundamental style. So bringing someone in to teach a fundamental class is super important. I would say there's relatively few cases where I would say you shouldn't do that. There's if it's at all available to you, that should be your first thing to do. Even if you're choreographing it yourself, bringing in someone to teach fundamentals is a really good idea. And beyond that, I'd say, yeah, obviously involving them sort of throughout the entire process. And then the other side of that, and this gets a little more tricky, is like the compensation side. But I think in general, it should be something that's compensated. Obviously, I think there's a pretty long and storied history of sort of the mainstream dance world taking from these community dances, these fundamental dances without appropriate compensation or crediting or anything. And so I think it is a real part of that, if you're going to bring people into this, they should be compensated for their work. Obviously that gets hard, especially if this is, like a super community based, no one's making money off of it situation.
Right.
But figuring out ways to do that, I think, is really important. And especially also just like crediting it when it happens. So that's my main thing is, bringing people in. And like, even if you don't have access to an in-person scene, I think this is a question I get a lot where people are like, oh, like I live in not the biggest city in the world. There's no ballroom scene here. There's not really people that are doing it. Either A, how can I start that? Or B, like, how can I access that? And we do live in, fortunately, a world where online you can reach out to people. Yeah.
Really,
I think in general, there's this sense of like unreachability or like mysticism or something that people have when they see these clips of people and they're like, oh, I wish I could ask them what to do here. And it's like, you can literally DM them. That doesn't mean they're going to respond. It doesn't mean they might be a dick, but like, you never know. But
yeah.
you should try. Like, if you want to that, like, more times than not, people are less busy than you think in that sense, and will give a minute of their time to be like, hey, thank you for reaching out. Either this is what I would do, here's like a 1 minute thing, or like I'd be happy to be more involved in a longer term thing. So reach out to people online. You will be surprised more often than not that they're actually willing to help out and give their expertise. And yeah, I think that's really it. It's like, even if you don't have the in-person resources, go to the online resources. There's plenty out there, but it's always better to do that than to kind of just try and do it all on your own and hope for the best.
Yes, I could not sound off more because where I live is very software engineer heavy, aerospace
Gotcha.
heavy, very not dance really at
Mhm.
all. So I've had to do that probably more times than not. My default is reach out online and then learning
Mhm.
online in those spaces because we are in an age where we can do that. And
Right.
I do think too to also really like sound off on what you're saying of I would say a lot of times people put dancers on like the same equivalence of a celebrity status because of
Mhm.
affiliation of either working with an artist or
Right.
something along those lines because it's in my algorithm and I'm seeing them in the same vein that I'm seeing Beyonce or I'm seeing,
Right.
Christina Aguilera. Then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, they're untouchable. I can't like talk to them. Whereas
Yeah.
but I could not agree more. Like shoot your shot. Like you
Right.
really never know. And there's so many times where just sending a comment underneath the video that you really like actually being vocal about the things that you like. Because I would also say, I don't know if you've noticed this for yourself. I don't, I'm not used to receiving a lot of encouragement for my work.
Right.
But people say that they like it, but I'm never like
Yeah.
told that as much, right? No one like
Yeah.
comments about it. And I'm not saying like I need that, but there's
Right.
a lot of times that even though as an individual, oh, I really love this, there's a really good chance
Mhm.
they
You never
don't
say
know
it.
that. You
Yeah.
never say it. So it's a really good, honestly, door to open. I've had people
Yeah.
on my follower side, I've had them DM me on Instagram and they're like,
Right.
"Hey, can you point me in the direction for this?" Or, "Hey, I just wanted
Mhm.
to let you know that this event's happening, and since you looked at this material, you may wanna look at this." Like,
Right.
I always feel so appreciated because they think about me to wanna still be a part of their day
Yes.
because I'm a regular human, right? But I
Right.
know that some
Right.
people see me in the same algorithm as, like,
Mhm.
Billie Eilish, cool, you know?
Right.
So I'd say I really love that you mentioned that because it's so true. It's abnormally true. And there's more people you're going to encounter that are way more down to earth than it gives an impression, I guess. That makes sense.
Exactly.
So I love that you touched on that for sure. I mean, this is a great example right here. Like this is great.
Right. Yeah. And I think like the message that I always love to get and honestly don't get enough of is people being like, oh, here's a video of me, you know, voguing based on your lessons, or even not, just like here's me at a ball from last week. I walked for the first time and you know, in the Philippines or wherever, it's super far away. And it's like, you know, do you have any feedback? And literally like I would say 80-90% of the time I see that and will happily give them, you know, a paragraph of like, you did like, you know, compliment sandwich, you did great. Here's everything I would change. You did great. Yeah. But it's like, I think it's like, again, I think people assume a level of like unreachability or untouchability or like lack of access that may not even exist. So you really will not know unless you try. And yeah, I think most of the time that frustration that comes from the fundamental side is really like, you know, if these people had reached out, we would have helped them. You know, it's not like so always reach out.
I love that.
Yeah.
And since you mentioned that, when I did I know that you reviewed this, which is why I'm bringing it up. Stay Tonight by Chung Ha.
Yes.
That one. I was requested to cover that, and so before I did my cover, I looked at your videos on how to catwalk correctly because there was a catwalk, and I'm like, I know it's the hips, but something's awkward about it. And so watching how I needed to reteach, needed to relearn, and that helps me be able to be in a better headspace and approaching it. Now, was it the best? Probably not. I would need that. You did great. Fix all this. You did great, but. I was able to be set up for more success by watching your channel. And the same is said, I know we said this before I started the recording, of the entire reason I had any skin in the game on justification for Vogue for the HHI circuit is because of your education videos, 1,000%. So I say from like, I'm just, so I'll say it as a day is long. If you need all day for me going through each video, saying what I like about it, I got you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm personally ready to see some really good examples. So
all right. So this first video is from a showcase called Vogue for Your Life. I believe it was in 2020, choreographed by Arturo Mugler, who is a huge icon in both kind of the ballroom sense and then also in the sense of people bringing choreography to Vogue. I look up to him a lot personally. He's done a lot of incredible work. I believe he's currently the lead choreographer for Cats, the Jellicle Ball, which is going on Broadway, as well as a bunch of other things. Yeah, so he's huge. He's done everything, but he's one of the main people that I always point to as someone who's able to put choreography on Voguers in a way that's really effective and really honors and highlights the beauty of Vogue and ballroom. So this specific piece is centering Kamaya Juicy Couture, and there are 5 other, I believe, dancers alongside her, maybe 6, so you'll see, but I just really love the way that the elements of Vogue are used in a choreographic sense and a blocking sense that feels really, really natural and really inventive. So we'll see.
Okay, here we go. I'm so excited. It's like I'm waiting for a dip to happen. Like, it's building. I really liked how clean that transition was.
Mhm.
Prop. Wow. Oh, we love. Wow, 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 wow. And then you see what my algorithm is right now.
Right.
Wow. Oh, I really enjoyed that because there's certain elements that I hadn't seen. Like, what was it? There was something like abnormally isolated about.
Mm.
Do you know what part I'm
The
talking
hands and the
about? Okay.
I think so.
Oh my God. Oh, what was it?
Is it the duck walk section or
Yes.
the
Yes.
yeah.
Normally it was like so isolated. I'm like, the strength
Mm.
to do that.
Yeah.
Impressive. Wow.
Yeah.
I would say like this one did a really good job on building to where it's like, okay, I know what I'm going to be expecting here soon, but I don't know when it's happening. You know what I mean? Like that's the beauty of like the punctuation of the importance of when the dip comes in sometimes.
Right.
So
Yeah, and I think what I really love about this is it's like the placement of the elements, it all makes sense, right? Like the catwalk is used as a transition to get like there's a point where two people come from the back or the front and it makes sense.
right,
And there's the hands are like this like storytelling element that's like really beautiful and isolated in the beginning with the chairs. But yeah, it's like everything has a place, and I think the depth of the understanding of all these people of the style of Vogue is what sort of enables that, where it's like they are able to be like, oh, if we want to accomplish this, this is how we can do it using the elements, as opposed to kind of like just trying to jam things together. So this is I think like a very kind of like set a casual like club night showcase thing that he put together. There's a ton of different performances. This is like one of the performances that he created for this. But I just think it's a really fun like
yeah,
example. And then the other last thing I wanted to highlight is like you see the like bleed of freestyle and improv, even though it is a choreography piece. Like there are moments like when she like scolds the audience for not applauding or whatever, where it's
right,
like that is
right,
obviously was not choreographed because they
that
could have been applauding and it wouldn't have made sense.
right,
But it's like, and then there's just like there's differences in the way that they're all executing the moves, but they're all like correct and individual, and it doesn't read necessarily as like unclean or as sloppy. It reads as sort of, you know, the individual like choices that are being made to accomplish the same thing.
right.
Um, yeah. So
Oh man, there was I think outside of the isolated
mm,
picture moment, there was the usage of using levels with either the
mhm.
upper body and then the hips. I think it was right here. I love that.
Yeah, yeah,
And then
yes.
even using the chairs in that way too was a really nice way of creating breakage in your levels. Oh, I really, really enjoyed the composition of this so much. From
Yeah,
like, even
yeah,
though like I know it's very much a showcase routine, but
right,
individuality was maintained and it does feel collaborative and it feels communal.
right.
I love that. I love that so much. Gosh, it's so fun. Scold the
Yeah,
audience. Tell them what's up.
yeah.
Wow. Oh, that was so fun. Okay. Sweet. We love that. Okay. Now we have
Oh no.
your work right here. Here we go.
Uh-huh.
LFG at WDCC. So there's a chance there's a lot of people who may not know that
Mm,
you had skin in the game on this circuit. So I would love to hear your thoughts before we take a watch,
sure.
your contacts and things like that.
Yeah, so first of all, I just do want to quickly clarify that they were not in the same division as royal family.
We were an
So
adult.
it was not like I made that video to be like, we should have won. No, completely separate division. I think because there were a mega crew versus a smaller crew, I believe was the distinction there. But this I had choreographed previously for LFG's. I want to say it was for like semifinals or something, whatever the regional equivalent of it was that happened. I remember it was like in Arizona or something for this, and then the finals were in New Zealand. It's the same event that the royal family video comes from. But yeah, Danielle and I have known each other for a long, long time. We both went to UCLA together, and I was around when she was creating Vimo. We've been friends since like 2015. So we have been working together and friends with each other. But this is one of the first times that as both kind of like developed professional adults that we were be able to sort of create something together. And she's always been a huge supporter of me and also a really huge supporter of the idea that if you're going to use the fundamental style as a choreo team, that you should bring in people who know the fundamentals. So I've been super appreciative of her for that. I will probably be harsher on this than I would otherwise because it's my own work. But I even with the constraints of, we had like a month or two to put this together, she still made the time and the effort to bring me out to teach multiple times fundamentals and then choreo and then blocking and continuously being involved in the whole thing. So I'm super, super appreciative to her on that. And the last thing I want to say is that this is not like this is perfect, do this situation where it's like, this is just good to show because I personally did it, so I can give a lot more insight than someone else's choreography. But with that in mind, yeah.
So excited. Okay.
I think, let me see. I'll tell you when my section starts for here. That's the whole section. Yeah. I also have a front view because I know a lot of it you can't really see in that side. Let me pull that up real quick and send it to you.
All right, front view time. Boom. Yeah, front view, you see more of the levels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's all right. No, it was great.
The format of it's really tasteful. I like it. Well, we could talk about my thoughts on it later, but let's talk about your thoughts on it first.
Yeah, so it's this the like concept of this set was like they were all like Nicki Minaj remixes, which was fun to do going into it, obviously. So the things that I really love to do when I'm putting choreo on a team for Vogue is with levels, I find that hands and floor performance match each other very well. So having sections where there are people up that are doing hands and then kind of floor performance matches it. Which happens a few times in this piece was a big thing for me, as well as the catwalk and the duck walk would be more transition elements. I don't even think there is any duck walk in this. We had a duck walk section that we took out because it just like did not feel normal, and there's just a little bit of catwalk as transitions. And then those dips as punctuation. There's a little bit of a fake out dip in here where there's like a floor performance slide to the floor and then around, and then it's like boom. Yeah. So that was a really fun thing to do. Obviously, all the dancers in LFG are like incredibly talented. So I came in with some like, stupid ideas, and I was like, I don't know if we're gonna be able to do this. This is like really hard. And they're like, let's do it. Like all the head spring, all nonsense. It's all
with the straddle accent.
Yeah, insane.
It was this right there. Hold on. Oh, yeah, that
Yeah,
A little
yeah.
bit.
And then having it punctuated too with like the back people are doing essentially like a duck walk stance and then like a duck walk stomp on the dip to sort of clean that was good. And a lot of this also I want to mention is Danielle was responsible for a lot of the kind of we talked back and forth about the cleaning and blocking decisions. So this is not
Mhm.
fully my work to credit here, but super happy with how it came out. And again, we worked on a very tight timeline for this, so very proud of
Yeah.
the girls for doing it
I love this
justice.
right here. Yeah.
Yeah,
All of
yeah,
that.
the up
So nice.
down, yeah.
I would say, okay, so
Hmm.
from how this would be adjudicated,
Uh-huh.
it's from a level standpoint, you guys have levels consistently. It's
Uh-huh.
clear, it's readable. The range is in check, not just, the A and B, but how we get theirs in check, like the straddles when they are
Hmm.
punctuated. Transitions there are nice with the head being sent over, like the accent point, and also the difficulty in going up to a forward roll. The transitions
Hmm.
were interesting, meaning that it wasn't just standard, okay, I'm on the ground, I'm just going to get up. I'm going to
Right.
risk take with quantity. So that was something that really helped the section too, was it
Hmm.
wasn't just an isolation outside of this point feature here, or there was always somebody that was complementing, and that helps difficulty score when you have more
Hmm.
people doing the thing. So I think that really helped. And I like the fact that I could so clearly recognize the fake out because of the context of, uh-oh, what did I do? Oh, I just realized I don't have my little marker because I'm not on my loom thing.
Right.
Okay. But if I had my marker looking at the upper body, that was my signal. I'm about to have a dip,
Mm.
but there was a fake out that happened, but this was
Mm.
the play. And that's how I was able to recognize it. So that just shows. And I also had a very like silly question that I ended up editing out
Mm.
of my original video. And it was, how do you not get a concussion whenever you do high level dips? And I think it's the arms, isn't it? Did the arms
Yeah.
catch you?
Yeah. So
Okay.
you're using the arms as support as well as your like upper thigh. So a lot of the kind of prerequisite is a level of like internal hip rotation in order to comfortably sit into the dip where you're not relying on your head, obviously. So yeah, your head really should not be hitting the floor at all. It's like your upper kind of traps area and your hands supporting yourself as well as your lower body, your thigh and everything else. Yeah,
Okay, cool. Yeah. I mean, so this ended up medaling, right? Did it get
it
second?
did.
I
Uh,
did
yeah,
it get
I feel
third.
like it got second. It got third. I think it did third. I want to say
Okay.
third.
Well, I mean,
Um,
this section is very strong
oh,
in
thank
the
you so
sense
much.
of like not just in the content. I'm
Mm,
not just saying it because you're here.
mm,
Looking at it from because it's not just the extremities that are in check. You can see the torsos be used, and that's
mm,
honestly where a lot of the authenticity score comes from is carriage. Because I remember
yeah.
Arnell, you know Arnell, right?
Yes. Yeah.
He trained. He was one of my people who trained me, which is really cool. And to this fact of a lot of times I was listening into his feedback that he would give to crews, and
Hmm.
one big component was the usage of carriage and how a
Exactly.
lot of times when you clean, that's the first thing to go is the torso
Yeah.
and any groove or anything like that for the sake of extremity cleanliness, because a lot of people don't realize this is what promotes that score, or that's what
Yep.
shows that it's authentic because it's implicit, it's lived in, right? Just
Yeah.
like having certain physical attributes that contribute to the capabilities of doing said techniques. Don't try to do something high level if you can't even healthily do the basic. And we can
Right.
tell you can't do the basic because you're not even showing it here or in proper engagement. So that
Yeah.
this was from an actual like, if I were to give any notes, you can tell that stage left
Mm,
side, unless
right.
it's like that's like little baby range things.
Right.
It does, like, the levels are being consistently switched off there.
Mm,
The transition is nice. I would say that moment was a little
mm.
bit unclear just in that moment because of the lack of the step that's happening if we're trying to cater to tempo or something along those
Yeah, the
lines.
tempo was a big pain point with the piece because in order, I think especially I think the time limit on this one was crazy short.
Oh, man.
Um, and there was so much that we wanted to put in there. So I think
Mhm.
we ended up cutting like two eight counts from the piece and then also just like tempo wise, I think we were very much at that upper range of like 140.
Right.
So that was like one of the biggest things with cleaning was like a lot of the stuff we had to really kind of check in on whether this was actually possible at the speed. And like some of the catwalks too, we were like, it really has to sit. I kind of constantly had to go back and be like, it really has to sit in that hip because especially at that high speed, it's very hard to keep that torso and hip engagement.
Right.
Um, without sacrificing any of the cleanliness. So
Right.
that's,
Exactly.
yeah.
I think all the concessions that you ended up making made it, this was very competitive for the style to justify. Like, because you have your hand performance. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is
And
one thing where it's like you as a choreographer, but it is also a reflection of them for putting in the work.
absolutely.
Because that's
Yeah.
also too, we can be our biggest critics as a, you know, in the choreography space where it's like,
Right.
okay, if my work is out there and people are going to assume that I'm competent or incompetent at the craft because of the reflection that's being seen, but that's not always the case. But in this case, it's your relationship, and you were willing to invest the time just as she was willing to invest it was a sense of humility is being showcased.
Oh, for sure.
Of
Yeah.
what we don't know, to where we're growing and it's so much bigger. It is making it communal and it's reflected in the product. Now, the thing for this would be the other elements that could be measured, not in the Vogue sense, but in the staging or the transitions would be what are we seeing that is creatively specific to the section, but also what is a fingerprint that helps with not necessarily a theme, because WDCC or HHI don't theme it out as much.
Right.
But they go off of, it needs to make sense. It needs to be readable throughout. It doesn't need to be super choppy in like, here's this really, really buck track that doesn't make sense with the transition to whacking. Like you could hear the transitions very clearly. So the sound in the composition side as a whole was really nice from what I was hearing, which is good. And you do get measured off of that too. And I know you're your biggest critic too. You're like,
Right.
but for what this was, it's a really nice track. And there's also certain notable sounds like, you know, the king, you know, that sound. We know it's expecting there's going to be Vogue in play. And so I will say I was trained that even though the song screams one style, it doesn't mean you automatically get the style. You have to show the key elements. So that's something where the song really helps, but also it can lead a risk to predictability on, okay, I know you're going to dip on this sound. And then if it satisfies, yes, culturally, that is something that you would do. How you package it and how you supplement to that predicting element, that's what helps in your complexity, and that's what helps in your difficulty and your creativity, which I would say the head slide, the fake out, and I like the risk taking, I think, on the floor, because levels are measured the whole time throughout the routine.
Right.
That I think really helped the section a lot, is the difficulty on going to the shoulders and the clarity of everybody's positioning for the dip position was really nice and satisfying. Could it be because I have this newfound knowledge and I know all these fun things, extra things now for me to pick up on, for me to really appreciate it differently, maybe, but also from this is nice. I mean, you'd have to look at the other sections and it would be a compilation score, but this was, be proud of this. I think Danielle should be super proud of
I obviously, I think we were both really, really happy with how it came out, because I think it's also a testament to sort of like what I was talking about earlier, which is like the importance of being involved in every step of the process, where it's like I also did a lot of the base level like mixing of the track, and then it was mixed by Brad Beasley to like fix everything and put everything together and everything. But I did a lot of this sort of like the advice on like, this is where we can put like a crash that would make sense, and that was a back and forth process as well. But like that sort of long standing continuing relationship that started when we worked together for semifinals, which I also have the video for if you want to see. It's not as I would say there's things that you can definitely see that we improved on from having multiple sessions of fundamentals training and multiple sessions of going through it. I linked it again if you want to watch it real quick. It can be in the video or not in the video, but
while we're here.
Yes. So this was the piece we did for semifinals, I believe. One second. I have a package. Let me get it real quick.
Go press play here. So I do recognize this outfit out of I didn't know that they went with the red kind of fit. Okay, here we go. Ready for this. I think I have the yeah, I do. Okay. I see what you mean. The framing of that was nice.
The Cat logo.
Oh, oh, I love that. Okay, I see. I think definitely you calibrated to who you had,
Mhm.
which I really, really respect because this technically had, I would say, more difficult I would say, like, skills to do, like, they're
Yeah.
more notable, but it's not as clean, and you do
Mhm.
see individuality, but in this circuit, individuality in the range or in how your torso operates in it doesn't work
Mhm.
well for you.
Right.
Also, as a side note, because you make your own music, how does because WDCC and HHI, you can get docked on profanity and you can get docked on cursing and things like that. And I know there's
Yes.
a lot of certain vocabulary
Yes,
that you're
yes.
invoking. How
It's
has
a
that
nightmare.
affected, right? Yeah. How has that affected the production side? Does it feel like you're limited because there's certain things that
Mm,
you want to be mentioned because it makes sense to
right.
phrasing, or has it been smoother because you have the freedom of developing your own composition for choreography?
Absolutely, yeah, so that has been a pain point. I think, there's some things that you can the beautiful thing about the crash is that it can also be used as a bleep, um, substitute, so that's an easy fix a lot, but there are, like, literal samples that are, like, commonplace samples in Vogue Mix that I just can't use because they are curse words in some sense, even though
Yeah.
they're not intended to that, and like, the intention of it in this context, it doesn't really matter for this sake.
Right.
So yeah, it limits a little. This actually, I don't think I did as much editing to it at all. It's just a track called Voguing Train, I believe by Earl the Grey, and it's a very old, not very old, it's like, I don't know, 10, 15 years old, but it was just a really fun thing. And we got to do like kind of pictures based on that. So we had like little train, like doors opening imageries and stuff. That was like, it was fun little stuff
Love that.
to put in there. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, I think if I critique like the duck walk section, I think was like a little sloppier, but it was, again, we had even less like, um, time together. And it's like, I think it also really highlights the importance of really building that like continuous partnership with members of a fundamental community or whatever, where you're like consistently going back and saying, I'm getting better, but what can I fix? I'm
Right.
getting, so yeah,
There's certain things
yeah.
that I know that you kept, like that part. I think
Yes, we love that part in the first, and we kept it.
right. I love this. I think that's a really fun section
The
here.
rotating,
But
yeah.
also, though, I think the choices that ended up happening for the sake of, needing to take that out,
Mm,
I think was very smart. The decisions were
yeah.
made sense, and I think it worked very well. Trying to think. Yeah, this one does have some of the transitions are a little bit easier to critique, I think is what it is.
Mhm.
There's more room, like even this section here that we do have a lot of like a lot of posing, which is
Mhm.
beautiful. We love individuality, which is nice, but lack of levels
Yep.
there to a certain degree. But you guys ended up integrating a lot of it in there, which is cool because that would be fine if the start of this next phrase wasn't also the same level being matched. But the fact
Yeah.
that it had such dynamics and it was very clear the attempt to do that, I think it really helped on that side of the score. And then this, I'm glad you kept this in because that's such a really
Yes.
nice, such a tricky transition. And even how we got up, I think how we even got up and transitioned into the two groups, that was very, very well done. Like how we got our,
Yeah.
but I also, once again, respect
That's
that
probably
you tried
Danielle.
you tried it, but also it's like, okay, we're not on the same page on how we need to execute those
Mhm.
checkbox, whether it's a BPM choice or if it's just the lack of fluency, because this is not at the top of the routine either. You're dealing
Right.
with a full-on sprint for the entire section because I just got
Right.
done talking with Killas from Vegas.
Mhm.
They competed HHI in the adult division, and they had asked me about one of the sections of their dance, and the thing is that I could give them feedback all day, but they have to do it right, like in the sense
Right.
of if it's too many changes going from prelim to
Mhm.
semis, as well as if it's too full out, like the change requires you to energy output differently, that can
Mhm.
cause more fatigue that really sets you for in a bad place performance wise. So that's something that I've really admired about Danielle is her
Mhm.
stamina
The
to go
stamina
full
and the
break
conditioning
out
that team does is
wild.
insane.
I
Yeah.
see it. It's like the fact that they could pull like a routine
Yeah.
that requires so much lower body. It's just
Uh-huh.
incredible. And I know she's known for her back usage as well, which is
Mm. Right.
so freaking fun. I love it. Love it. Yeah. So in general, I think
Yeah.
this one, I love that. That was cute. Good transition, but
Yeah.
sometimes you just need a little reverb point.
Yeah.
That was cute. But yeah, I like both for different reasons. I think both
Right.
they both stand as a justified, like the end of the day, did it justify the style? The answer is yes. I
Right.
had you as a part of it. The question is other elements that you had the opportunity to grow in ways where because you were there a part of the journey, is that authenticity, is the complexity, is the musicality, creativity in the production of it.
Mm.
I hope everybody watching, I hope you guys are able to see, like, this is a really cool example of you're leading by example on the things that you recommend. You're like, I'm doing
Right.
stuff. It's not like, hey, do this thing, but I'm not going to
Right,
tell you about it. No,
right.
I literally just did it on the same circuit, different division.
Hmm.
So it's really, really cool. And it's not like you guys lost, you podiumed both places,
Right.
right? So it's
Yeah.
not like you're doing something right. So there's
Yeah.
beauty in that too, right? Because sometimes people are like, oh, you lost, so you can't,
Yeah,
whatever. No, it's things shouldn't be in the monetary, like the materialistic stuff, but I know a lot of times we can feel that way.
yeah,
Anyway, but
yeah.
yeah, all in all, thank you for being willing to show
Sure.
your own stuff. A shout out to
Uh-huh.
Danielle and LFG
Yeah,
and
shout out to
Gino.
Danielle, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah,
my gosh, she's a
she's a
freaking cool.
genius. Yeah.
She's so fun. I love it. Wow. Oh my gosh. This was incredible. I
Of
love
course.
this so much. This is
Yeah,
great. If I'm ever in LA, will you take me to
happily. Yeah, I can also tell you from here where you should go in your own region. Yeah,
okay,
it gets
okay.
tougher, based on where you are. Obviously, the epicenters of ballroom in the United States, I would say, are New York and Chicago and DC and LA and Atlanta, um, and more. But it's like it's international, but it's not every single town is going to have a ballroom team. So it's like there's still, obviously limitations based on where you live, but I'm always happy to refer people to whatever is closest to them.
Oh, so exciting because I've been shy to branch out
Sure,
and like
for
actually
sure.
go and just be in the space. It's just
Yeah,
so cool. And this was so insightful for me. And I know there's probably so many people that just learned a heck of a lot of information, and hopefully it promotes curiosity and motivation. If somebody has really
absolutely.
wanted to be curious, they have stepping places of where they can go. So outside of, reaching out to somebody within the ballroom,
Mhm.
let's say somebody is, they want to be a part, but let's say they don't even know how to even get in
Right.
contact with somebody. What are some sources that they can look at right away that can lead them in a direction of knowing who to even look up? And
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think my number one recommendation always is like looking at primary source material from balls. So channels that I would really, really recommend on YouTube specifically, there's a channel called BRTV TV. It's Ballroom Throwbacks. And they have essentially been posting, like they've been filming and posting clips from balls for 10, 15, 20 plus 30 years. And there's millions of other channels like them. There's some that specifically cater towards digitizing like VCR footage from the 90s and 2000s ballroom. Like there's a channel called Old School Ballroom. There's Sugar Shane. There's a bunch of other ones, and I can send you links to include in the description as
yes,
well for all this. But that's really my number one suggestion because you're going to get a sense for the kind of history of ballroom as well as sort of its enduring kind of presentness, because I think that's one of the big sort of pitfalls, especially in this conversation, is that the understanding of ballroom is in some senses it's like a historical relic for a lot of people where they're like, oh, this is like this thing that happened in the 80s and Vogue happened, and maybe there's still some people doing it, but it really is like such an active and ever growing scene. So I think being connected to balls that happened in the 90s as well as balls that happened yesterday is really, really valuable, and seeing how the styles have progressed and evolved and seeing what gets tens and what gets chopped, I think is also a very, very natural sort of feedback loop as someone who's looking to choreograph or dance in the style or whatever, to be like, okay, this is what I should do, this is what I shouldn't do. So that's my number one thing. You can also obviously learn to Vogue online. There are people that teach online Zoom classes. There are people that teach online on-demand classes. A little bit. Yeah, so I do it on my YouTube channel. I have a number of free tutorials as well as I have the membership side of my YouTube channel. I've set up to do monthly full-length classes. So totally an option if you want to. If not, no worries at all. And yeah, there's millions of other kind of resources, and you can reach out to me if you can't find anyone else. You can reach out to me. I will try to respond. I'm pretty good about responding to people. Sometimes it gets buried in like bot spam and I miss it, but if I don't reach out the first time, try again, and I'll probably respond the second time. But you can just DM me on Instagram or something and I'll probably see it. But yeah, I think really just like once you do your first thing, once you go to your first ball, once you take your first class, whatever, everything evolves from there. Like you're going to meet people who send you to places who tell you about things that are happening, and it all evolves very naturally. It's just getting that first foot in the door that I think is really intimidating for a lot of people. But once you do, it's all going to carry on from that.
That's brilliant. I love that.
Yeah.
Since you talked about, going through the history and there's
Mm,
beauty looking at the 90s versus what's happening in the 2010s, right?
mhm,
There's the old way and new way. Because I know I'm going to probably get this question because I've
mhm.
been looking at a lot of circuits and the whacking side, and there's that kind of discussion that's been happening.
Right.
Are there key elements that have been developed into the new way compared to the old way, and what kind of gets weighed? What is the determining factor when you have a judge there giving tens?
Uh-huh.
What is being looked at and what is maintained outside of, does my question make sense? I guess is
Yeah,
my
it does. Yeah,
okay.
so this is a layered, long question.
It is.
Fortunately, I made a video about a little bit more than a month ago called "The Not So Simple History of Vogue Dance." It's on
Okay.
YouTube.
What then we
It
can
is,
put that in the description
yeah,
and
we can
I'll
put
watch
that in the
it at
description.
the time. Yes.
Yeah,
Wow.
so but there I basically have like a super short explanation, a medium explanation, and a more layered explanation of the history of Vogue as a style. The caveat to that all is that it is a very complex and international thing that also is relied largely on oral history being passed down. So it's much
Mm,
less of like a, this is exactly what happened as much of like a, this is what I've been told has happened slash this is what the evidence supports has happened. But
right.
there will be people who disagree regardless. But the overall of it is that there are three main styles, main categories of Vogue, which are Old Way, New Way, and Vogue Femme. The one that people use very often these days is Vogue Femme, but the other two are still also existing and evolving from their origins. But they all come from this sort of mother style of what we now know as Old Way, what we originally knew as just performance or pop, dip, and spin. So anyway, 11 minutes if you want to look more into that.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
but yeah, the long and short of it is that I would say, generally speaking, you would be rooting your performance or your choreography or whatever in one or the other, whether it's new way or old way or Vogue Femme. I don't think it's a problem to mix them. I've talked about that as well, but I think usually speaking, there is a different set of rules, a different set of contexts for each sub style that you'd expect to see bundled together.
Is it normally established like when you go to a ball, there's different divisions, right? Is there
Absolutely, yeah.
a one where the music, I'm going to assume, also caters to
It's
that
different.
helps set
Yeah,
people up for success? Okay, so that was my
yeah.
clarifying question with that
Yeah,
there.
they're
That
all
makes
different
sense.
categories. Yeah. So, and it's like, and even within each subsection, they are often further subdivided. So within Vogue Femme, you have soft Vogue versus dramatic Vogue that may be split up. You have gendered differences where, we have trans women and women and like these different kind of femme queen, butch queen, women. There's like a million different ways that it can be further subdivided and often is. Or sometimes it's all lumped together in something called open to all performance, which would be old way, new way, and Vogue Femme.
Oh, okay. Is there one that's called ballerina? I think I saw. No, I know. There's one that called it as a division. It's like the ballerina.
Oh, okay.
I think it was the
Yeah.
it was the women division. Is what I think it was.
Maybe.
I
Yeah.
think
So I
it's just
think
a ball specific thing. Okay.
yes, exactly. So that's the other thing is that like you have categories that are like a essentially a rubric that is not specific to a specific ball, and then at a specific ball, a category would have like an effect or something that you have to bring it as, where it's like, oh, bring it as a ballerina, or like, oh, bring it as an animal of your choosing, and that it affects your costuming. It also affects like your movement and your presentation as well.
I can imagine how crazy an animal
Yeah,
themed division.
yeah.
Wow. Oh, that's incredible. Okay, so I think I have one more question.
Okay.
In my position, so I am not somebody who actively practitions in Vogue, more so on the whacking side than Vogue, but I
Mm,
have a lot of respect for it, and I do tend to observe a lot of it in this line of work too.
right.
What is something that I can do in my position to be a better messenger? I'm not necessarily an advocate because I don't think it needs
Right.
you're doing the advocacy because you're in the scene, but like to be a messenger on behalf of these types of conversations with you and with others to be better at this position looking at Vogue material in the future.
Mm. Honestly, I mean, I think it's like I don't think there's a limit on who should engage with it or give their opinions on it or anything like that. I think it's equally valuable to have that obviously with the, the caveat of saying that you're not an expert or whatever the case is. But I don't know. I think it's like the more you're able to kind of um, look at the primary source material as like an an interested spectator, and really understand it. And, if you have questions, to reach out to someone who can answer them, et cetera. I think that really is all you need to do, where it's like, um, just kind of, and then I think just like as a standpoint, regardless of style or whatever, it's like the same ideas of like, you should be involved in the community in some sense. If you're going to put a piece in this style here, you should be reaching out to people, like all of that. I think as long as it's like, as long as you're consistently applying that, regardless of whether it's a style that you have investment in or not, I think that's really all it is. Yeah.
Okay, that's encouraging to hear. Okay,
Mhm.
that's awesome, because I feel like there's gonna be always this conversation, right? But
Right.
there's beauty in the fact that we're able to have the conversation
Mhm.
that could spark this kind of effect in ways that if
Mhm.
we have it, it wouldn't have happened. So I'm
Exactly.
very happy that we were able to touch on so many different things. I have no idea how this is going to be edited, but
Yeah.
this is incredible. And if those of you made it all the way to the end, if we kept all the things, thank you for being a part of this. I'm so thankful for Gravity, for
Of
the
course.
willingness
Thank
of
you.
conversation and discussion. And this is fun for me. This is such a, I don't know, little bucket list checked off, because I've always wanted
Oh,
to meet you. So I'm really happy that we got to end this in this way.
and thank you for having me. I always appreciate getting to ramble about the things that I'm passionate about to people who are willing to listen. So
So
yeah,
Rambler, I love the collaboration. This is
yeah.
so fun. So, but yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Once again, Gravity, thank you. Make sure you subscribe to Gravity if you liked any of this. Right here, bada beam, bada boom. So much information, and you'll
Mhm.
see me in my respective stuff. And we will catch you guys later.